Good morning, everyone. Welcome, 34th PCO Democrats. I'm Graham Murphy, chair of the 34th Democrats, at least until Wednesday evening when I get put out to pasture. And I want to share my appreciation for all of you for taking the time to participate in our candidate forum this morning for the vacant Senate seat and conditionally vacant House seat in our district. Participating in the process to fill vacancies is one of the most critical duties of a PCO, and I'm thankful to all of you for taking this responsibility so seriously. This is a fast-moving process with many moving parts, and ultimately, the King County Democrats will facilitate the vote all of you as PCOs will participate in to nominate candidates to fill the vacancies. And we are partnering with them to ensure a smooth process throughout this. So please continue to pay attention to your emails from the 34th Dems and the King County Democrats, and please read them carefully. I also want to share my thanks to Senator Joe Wynn, who has been an incredible senator for the 34th, and I'm thankful that he will continue to serve our community in his new role as director of the State Commerce Department. He called me directly to let me know about his appointment before it was announced, which allowed us all to get ready to fill his vacant seat in the state Senate. And I'm thankful for his openness that prepared us to run a smooth, fair, and transparent process. And thank you to our candidates for offering to represent the 34th and moving quickly to participate in this forum. I think it's only been about a week since we announced it, so a lot happening. This forum is optional and not mandated. And so any candidate can still be nominated on the 19th when the King County Democrats convene PCOs. This is not a requirement to be a candidate. This forum is going to be run like a webinar. So all questions have been shared with candidates and PCOs in advance and will be asked by our moderator. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to our moderator, who also led the development of the forum rules and questions that we'll be using today, Jordan Crowley.
Thanks, Graham. And thank you all for joining us this morning. My name is Jordan Crawley. I'm a PCO in West Seattle and have served on the e-board for the 34th District Democrats for more than 6 years, including as second vice chair for the last 4 years. Our organization is hosting this forum to hear from those people who hope to be nominated for and later appointed to fill uh, our vacant Senate seat and conditionally vacant representative seat. It will be our precinct committee officers who ultimately vote to nominate 3 candidates per position, from which the King County Council will elect an appointee. So this forum is to provide our PCOs with what they need to make an informed decision. Because several of those participating in today's forum expressed interest in both positions, the forum is being held as one panel, inclusive of all people who intend to be nominated for either position. Each candidate will have an opportunity to provide an opening statement, answer each question, and a closing statement. However, due to the crowd that this opportunity has drawn, not every candidate will have a chance to respond first. To keep total speaking time consistent between all participants, response times will be strictly enforced, so candidates will have up to 2 minutes each for their opening and closing statements, 90 seconds to respond to each question, and when their time expires, the respondent will be muted so we can move on to the next person. Here with us today, we have a total of 8 forum participants. We had 9 on the list, but 1 is absent. So we want to be as efficient as possible while still allowing for well-thought, insightful answers. The order of response has been determined by a digital name order randomizer. So we will get started with Chenka Favarini Chorba, and then Gina Top, Ben Carr, Sarah Moore, Stephanie Tidholm, Jeffrey Wukelik, Brianna Thomas, and Emily Alvarado. This will be the order that we cycle through for the duration of the forum. However, closing statements will be heard in the reverse of that order. So starting with Emily, then moving to Brianna, and then Jeffrey, and so on. These are the same rules which were provided in advance and agreed upon by the participants. We also reviewed them with the participants just before this forum, and I'm excited to hear what each of our participants have to say. Thank you all again for your willingness to serve, and thanks again to all of you who came to listen to the forum. It's always nice to see this many people engaged. We have 62 people present right now on a Sunday morning, so that's awesome. Uh, So let's get started with opening statements, starting with Chinka.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Chenka Favrini Chorba, and I'm honored to put my name forward for the 34th District House of Representatives vacancy. I have dedicated my career to developing smart environmental and climate policy and to increasing the resilience of our communities, particularly the most vulnerable among us. I'm seeking this appointment because now more than ever, our state needs bold, progressive leaders to advance innovative policy that can be a model for the rest of the country. Washington has proven that when we can be a national leader in climate policy, in protecting our queer community, codifying our rights to abortion and other health care, and so much more. This last election, we proved that when we fight for progressive values, we win. But now is not the time to sit back and rest while our immigrant neighbors, our transgender community members, and others face increasing attacks and wake up wondering whether their basic rights will be stripped away under a new Trump administration. We need leaders who will fight to make Washington a sanctuary for these communities. I am committed to being one of those leaders. I'm unique among the candidates because I have extensive experience crafting, advocating for, and implementing state laws and policy. As policy director at the Department of Natural Resources, I've developed a deep understanding what it takes to turn a bill into meaningful change on the ground. I also have firsthand experience planning for and dealing with major budget cuts. Our state is facing an over $10 billion budget shortfall, and legislators this session will have a critical task to ensure that any cuts are equitable and responsible and are matched with innovative, progressive revenue generation. The 34th District deserves an experienced leader who won't be playing catch up as they dive in midstream to this legislative session. I am that leader, and I would be honored to earn your support. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Gina Top, a proud product of our public schools, a lawyer, small business owner, president of the Seattle School Board, former chair of the 34th District Democrats, and a proud mom to a 3-year-old who will soon be a public school student. I want to bring all of that experience and commitment to bear in representing our district in Olympia as your next representative. The main reason I'm running is that this district, where my husband and I are raising our daughter Cora, is our home and one of the best places in the state to raise a family, but it's becoming increasingly unaffordable. Housing, healthcare, and childcare costs are skyrocketing, making it harder for people and families to live, work, and give back to this community. I've never been one to sit back and hope for change. I put ideals into action. I didn't sit back and complain about politics or party. I got engaged. I became a precinct committee officer, treasurer, and served as chair of the 34th District Democrats. Concerned about the challenges we have with our upside down tax system, I went back to school to learn exactly how this system works so I can change it. I didn't sit around and mourn the loss of our neighborhood restaurant, the first restaurant my daughter ever went to. My family and I put our all into reopening and saving it. I didn't sit around and bemoan the state of our schools, hoping they would be ready for my daughter and the next generation. I ran for the school board, won, kept schools open, and became the president of the board. And I'm not accepting the continued upside down state of our tax system, runaway climate change, the skyrocketing cost of living, or the return of a horrible man to the White House without a fight. I'm running for the House of Representatives to take our progressive values and make them real for the people of this district and the people of this state. I'm Gina Taub. I'd be honored to earn your support. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Ben Carr, and I am asking for your vote for the 34th LD representative position. I'm looking through and I'm seeing a lot of familiar faces and names, but there may be some of you who are asking, who is this guy? We're going to all be trying to distinguish ourselves later this morning, but I just wanted to start by telling you a couple things about who I am. I'm a father of a 13-year-old girl, a lifelong local, and I'm a resident of Vashon Island. And yes, that means that I do have chickens. I do. You get them standard issue when you move to Vashon. I'm somebody who lost a parent to gun violence a number of years ago, a school shooting on PLU. campus in Tacoma. And that experience has shaped the work I've done in recent decades. I am someone who experienced housing insecurity when I was younger, and that gives me a sensitivity to issues of housing, affordability, and homelessness. I'm generally the first guy to run down to see the orca when they swim by in the Sound. I'm proud to stand alongside my brothers and sisters in MLK labor as a delegate from my office, the Attorney General's office. I continue to volunteer in my community, including on the local Vashon Maury Community Council. And I have some real world experience writing, advising on, and passing strong legislation in Olympia, as I'm going to talk more about soon. I just want to end this by saying we're at a critical moment in our self-governance, and we're not going to be able to rely on people in DC to deliver for us in the coming years. Decisive state action is important, and I believe I can be an integral part of that. Thanks.
Hello. Oh, hello. I'm honored to speak with you today and to be considered for the House of Representatives position among this qualified pool of applicants. My name is Sarah Moore. I'm 3 years into my first term on the Burien City Council. Elected in 2021, I have experience running, winning, and serving. My campaign team was small but mighty, and I continue to work with them to this day on city issues. I'm a 22-year resident of North Burien, where I raised my 2 kids and can afford to keep pet goats, chickens, grow berries, and observe many wildlife. The trade-off is we live under the flight path of the airport, and my child Noah experienced life-threatening asthma episodes, statistically more common in our neighborhood. Noah's experience on bike collisions on unsafe roads with vehicles motivated me to seek safer streets and more bike and pedestrian access. As I spoke on these topics, I became more civically engaged and to speak on issues that impact the greater community. When Burien worked to pass a safe city ordinance for undocumented immigrants, I joined and was inspired at what a group of people in a small community can do to protect its residents, and thus I began the path to launching my own run for city council. I've been described as the Miss Frizzle of the Burien City Council, and my professional experience helped earn that title. I worked at Pacific Science Center developing exhibits, notably the Butterfly House. During the pandemic, however, I left to manage an isolation and quarantine facility for folks exposed to COVID-19 who lacked secure housing. I spent my mid-20s in what I now know was housing instability, and the pandemic highlighted to me the vulnerability that comes with all kinds of housing insecurity, especially to those who are visibly homeless. I approach new problems with empathy, curiosity, and patience. I gather information from a variety of sources. I'm focused on logical solutions.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Stephanie Tidholm. I'm the mom to 2 teenage boys. I'm a first-generation college graduate. I've lived in the district on and off my adult life in the Fauntleroy and the Admiral areas, and most recently in White Center as a 10-year resident. I'm originally from Yakima, Washington. I grew up in Kirkland, but my whole life I experienced housing insecurity, food insecurity. It was pretty bad to the point that we would have to take the bus to the food bank and bring the food back in a laundry basket. Had a lot of trauma growing up. So when I had my own children, and just not also having in the educational space a parent that was supportive. So when I had my own children, I made it a point to be very, very active in my babies' lives and in their education. I'm not a politician. 2.5, 3 years ago, you couldn't ask me anything about politics or my local elected officials. I wasn't born and bred for this. I was dropped into this because I was so active in my community and advocating. I was asked to run for school board. So here I am now, a year into my term on Highline School Board, currently serving as the vice president, the capital projects liaison, the legislative liaison, also president of the board of directors of Washington for Black Lives. I'm on the link steering committee for the Center for Children and Youth Justice. as well as the advisory board chairwoman for a local nonprofit. I spend a lot of my time advocating and working for the community, including working as a social worker specifically for the unhoused. And the fact that I do work as a social worker supporting the unhoused, and I'm also an elected official, and I work very hard, and I'm still suffering and experiencing the issues that are going on with the world and the inflation. It's really disappointing, and that's where my heart is and why I have worked so hard, because it's not okay for us regular people who are working and trying to still be in this position. And I would be honored to be appointed to continue the work that I have been doing. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Jeffrey Wukelik. It's an honor to be running for this position. I was born and raised in West Seattle, and nearly my entire extended family lives in this district. I attended Alka Elementary, Lafayette Elementary, Holy Rosary School, and Lakeside School. After graduating from UW with a computer engineering degree, I've been working as a software developer and engineering manager. Because of these professional endeavors, I have refined my abilities in solving technical problems, leading teams through challenging projects, and communicating with stakeholders. I strongly believe I can transfer these skills to the state legislature. In addition, my passion for public service and giving back has been a driving force throughout my personal life. I have worked for multiple campaigns, most recently serving as a finance associate for Senator Patty Murray's 2022 re-election campaign. Beyond my political involvements, I engage with my community by volunteering with the Alzheimer's Association and serving as a member of the Lakeside Alumni Board. If there's one thing to know about me, it is that I believe in kindness and the power of listening. It is my hope that I can contribute my strengths in collaboration, curiosity, and compassion to the community in which I live and to our state government. I'm excited to tell you more about my ideas and how I plan to help the 34th District. In the meantime, here's a little bit more about me. I enjoy reading, playing basketball, playing chess, and taking improv comedy classes. You can also find me at Mariners games, even if we're losing, which seems to be every season. Thanks.
Good morning, everybody. I am Brianna Thomas, and it is a pleasure to be with you yet again here in front of this body. I have lived in West Seattle for the better part of 18 years, in the Morgan, Admiral, and now Main Junction, also some time in South Park. I put my hat in the ring because we are at a really critical impasse at the state level with the budget deficit that's coming up, and we need someone that can start on day one. I have moved 15 policies in the last 2 years while serving in the mayor's office as Mayor Harrell's labor liaison and special projects manager, including our housing levy last year, which thank you all for your vote. That passed beautifully. I do not own any chickens or goats, but I have rented the same apartment in the Junction for the last 10 years and am really fond of my neighbors. We look out for each other here in West Seattle, and that's what I'm hoping to bring to this position. Someone that's looking out for you, that's looking out for affordable housing development, that's looking out for access to behavioral health, inpatient treatment during the crisis that we're seeing, not just downtown Seattle, but across the entire state, looking out for our immigrant and refugee neighbors that are feeling more vulnerable than ever, looking out for our rights and our access to reproductive justice, gender affirming care, and not having to make decisions between medicine, food, and housing. I hope to have this position to continue to look out for West Seattle and the entire state. I also have the ability to speak moderate Republican in difficult situations, having been fourth generation from a military background. Doesn't mean I share their values, but somebody's got to do the work reaching across the aisle, and I think I'm the person best positioned to do that. I am looking forward to hearing the other answers from my fellow candidates who are all quite august and accomplished. And thank you for joining us on Sunday morning.
Well, hello, I'm Emily Alvarado, and I want to first off thank the 34th District Democrats for hosting this debate. It's an absolute honor to represent this district as your state representative. I believe that in a state as prosperous as Washington, everyone should have a foundation, an affordable home, the health care that you deserve, the child care that you need, and world-class public schools. I believe in an economy that lifts everyone up, and a social safety net that catches everyone if we fall. It's on this platform that I have run and I've won, and I'll continue to fight. So the question today really is, why the Senate? And on that question, I have 3 points. First of all, I'm for the people. Folks say that when leaders go over to the Senate, they become more disconnected, harder to reach. That's not how I'll govern. I listen to constituents. I want to understand your needs and priorities. I believe in accountability and transparency. 2, I'm a collaborator. Some say that bills go from one chamber to the other to die. I believe that given the amount of Democrats that we have in both chambers, we need to be pushing policy and winning. I'll leverage the great relationships that I've made in the House of Representatives and move them over to the Senate for cross-chamber collaboration. And 3, I'm ready to lead. The 34th deserves real leadership in both chambers, someone who's prepared to jump in and address the significant challenges that our district and our state is facing. I have the values, the expertise, and the proven experience to represent our district in the state Senate, and I hope to earn your support. Thank you.
Jordan, I think we're moving to questions.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on to the first question. The first respondent will be Gina Top. How do you believe your background and qualifications distinguish you from others who may be nominated alongside you and make you a unique fit for this role?
Thank you, Jordan. My background makes me uniquely suited for this role because it brings together my policy experience, my hands-on governance experience, and my deep connection to this community. As a current president of the Seattle School Board, I've worked on some of the most challenging issues facing public education, budget shortfalls, school closures, and this work has fueled my determination to serve in the legislature to make sure our students, teachers, and schools get the funding and support they need. My professional experience as a tax attorney with a master's degree in tax law equips me with a rare understanding of our state's tax system and the tools needed to reform it. Additionally, I served as a chief legal counsel and policy advisor to King County Executive Dow Constantine, which gave me valuable experience in policymaking, working on transforming the juvenile legal system, reducing gun violence, and creating a strategy and finding the funding to preserve our last most important natural lands and urban spaces in 30 years. But beyond my professional experience, I'm living the challenges of this district every single day: housing costs, childcare expenses, and the struggle to build a future for my family here. It's this combination of professional experience and public service that makes me uniquely qualified to represent our district.
Thanks, Gina. And thanks, Jordan. I'm coming to this as somebody with some real experience drafting and writing, advising on and shepherding legislation through Olympia. Whether it was in my role as a senior deputy prosecutor in King County, a role that I had for 14 years that allowed me to focus not only on helping homicide and domestic violence and sexual assault victims and their families navigate a complicated system, but also focused really heavily on criminal legal reforms, reducing incarceration rates and being smarter on crime. That worked. It got me involved with our Criminal Justice Reform Committee, our Legislative Review Group, and the governor's WSBA Council for Public Defense and other organizations. And then in my more recent role as an Assistant Attorney General here in Washington, I've been able to write legislation, for example, within the last couple of years with Representative Levitt out of the Tacoma area. We wrote a bill to better protect seniors from robocalls and phone scams. I've also been working on legislation to combat organized retail crime, to protect workers and protect our legitimate retailers, and to prevent gun violence and hold the gun industry accountable. So I have delivered and will continue to deliver real legislative results. And I would do that for this district as well. Thanks.
My experience campaigning fundraising, running for and serving on Burien City Council, attending Association of Washington Cities and National League of Cities events and trainings, and engaging with state legislation as it impacts city governance gives me the tools to start quickly at the state level. On the City Council, I uphold my principles while preserving my future ability to work with my colleagues. I'm often in the minority on contentious issues such as responses to homelessness, city relationships to the King County Sheriff's Office, the shape and scope of the minimum wage ordinance, the relationship between the City Council and its commissions, and how to meaningfully engage with our community. I'm proud to speak my truth. I have learned to push for better policy even when disagreeing strongly. I am respectful, and I continue to work with my colleagues to accomplish the core functions of local government, passing a balanced budget, approving a comprehensive plan, championing public safety, and clearing the way to increasing affordable housing. I understand the cadence of governance and the responsibilities thereof, and have become a quick study on city issues and will continue the same study practices and principles at a state level.
What makes me uniquely fit for this position? First of all, I'm not a politician. I'm just a human being trying to survive another day. I'm a mother, a community auntie, a social worker, a substance abuse counselor, worked in domestic violence and legal advocacy. I'm multifaceted in being from a marginalized community and experiencing the experiences of that side, as well as living in White Center, but also having grown up in Kirkland, which is the demographics are obviously very different, and also having lived in the Admiral and the Fauntleroy area. I am no stranger to animosity and contention or adversity, both in my personal experiences and particularly on my board position, again, where I serve as vice president of the Highline School Board, where our new president supporters have been very vocal and are frankly only getting bolder since the recent election. I am not. I am not Again, I'm not a politician. I'm here because I am an auntie in the community and a mother and an advocate. And I was asked to be in this position. And as fun as it can't be at times, and I certainly have more gray hairs and ulcers than I did before I accepted this role, it's needed to have people who are in the community and experience what's going on. And are here because we want to see that change and not for our own personal benefits. Not to speak to any of my current opponents. You all seem amazing. Thank you.
I'm different than the other candidates for a few reasons. Number one, I was born and raised in West Seattle. I've lived here for 30 years and I'll continue living here for the rest of my life. I know some of you as former coaches, parents of friends and classmates, and others simply as neighbors. Number two, I have an engineering degree and I've worked for multiple startups. At my current company, I was the first engineer they hired. And because of this background, I know how to quickly adapt, how to quickly learn about complicated problems, and how to be persistent. Reason three, I'm young and have fresh ideas. The Democratic Party needs more engagement from younger voters, and I can bring those people in. So, how am I qualified? First, I have experience working in politics. I've done everything from accounting, fundraising, phone banking, organizing events, meeting with supporters, and knocking on doors. Additionally, I'm an approachable, effective, and proven representative. I currently serve on the Lakeside Alumni Board, where I meet with alumni, listen to their ideas and concerns, and then advocate for them in our board meetings. Some of my accomplishments include organizing TED Talks and securing funding for alumni events outside of the Seattle area. I was also elected the vice chair of the UW Computer Science and Engineering Student Advisory Council. Similar to my position on the Lakeside Alumni Board, I was chosen by my peers to be their representative. I'm committed to being an authentic and sincere listener who is motivated to advocate on behalf of others. Last but not least, I deeply care about this district, and that simple fact cannot be overstated.
Unmuting thing really takes time off the clock. I think I am different than my fellow candidates because I am happy to be an effective generalist. In the last 9.5 years, I've served the city and the city council, 6 of those as the chief of staff to the council president during a global pandemic and Trump 1.0 and a social uprising and calling for racial justice and police reform. I actually have the hands-on skills and experience to know what it takes to not only write good policy, but implement it, what it means to partner with people who don't share your values, and how to hold a line when someone's trying to undo what we know is good work. I did that last year while Sarah Nelson tried to defund the minimum wage and roll back protections for workers in the gig economy. We held the line and we made sure that those folks got the rights that they deserved and the wages they were entitled to. I also am quite the active listener that takes the work seriously, but not myself too much. I appreciate the importance of stakeholdering. I've got great ideas, but I'm here to represent you. That's the role of being part of a legislative body. And, governing is indeed a team sport. And I've got quite a few people on this call that'll tell you I'm a good teammate. I think the other thing that makes me different is I'm the kind of person that runs into danger when we need to hold each other up. And right now, we are all really in a tight spot. Man, I had too much coffee.
Thanks for the question, Jordan. So a bit about me. I believe deeply in public service, and I've spent my professional career working as a housing leader, both in the nonprofit and the public sector, really helping to create more affordable housing to make it easier to buy your first home, to protect renters, and to prevent displacement and homelessness. So I have experience in one of the state's most pressing issues. I'm trained as a lawyer, and I care deeply about protecting civil rights and the rights of vulnerable people. I've been an organizer, working for Planned Parenthood, fighting on the streets for reproductive justice, bringing together faith and labor and environmental leaders and community leaders to fight for public benefits when we have major infrastructure projects. I know how to bring people together. And I'm a mom of 2 kids who go to Seattle Public Schools. I care deeply about the quality of our schools. I love raising my family in this district, and I believe in creating healthy and safe communities for our future. And also, uniquely, I'm the sole person going for this position who currently serves in the state legislature. I'll be able to hit the ground running. I have the experience and the expertise that'll represent this district well.
I'm one of the only candidates who can say that I have worked directly with the state legislature and have already successfully passed critical legislation. In 2022, the very first piece of legislation that I drafted and lobbied for, 5619 on kelp and eelgrass conservation, passed unanimously. In 2023, I led the legislative strategy for one of DNR's highest priority and most controversial bills on carbon policy. I drafted the legislative language, engaged with tribes, legislators, and stakeholders, and wrote countless amendments. The bill passed off the House floor with a vote of 82 to 13. And although it ultimately died, its strong bipartisan support in the House demonstrated that I was able to work successfully with Democrats and Republicans, industry, and environmentalists to find a middle ground with what is typically a controversial topic. I also happen to know that this bill will be coming back this session and will need a strong environmental advocate. Finally, last session under my leadership, DNR was successful in advancing a bill that created a tax exemption for qualified affordable housing built on public lands. This bill also passed nearly unanimously, demonstrating that common sense policies to address the housing crisis can be bipartisan. I'm uniquely qualified among the candidates because I have a demonstrated track record of working with legislators to advance critical policies, and that is the experience that will best serve the 34th District.
Thank you. Moving on to question number 2. First respondent will be Ben Carr. Recognizing that we will be considering candidates for election to these positions beginning with filing week in May, why are you seeking this appointment instead of just running for office? Why is it important that you have this job now?
Yeah, thanks, Jordan. The simple answer is the correct one here. The job needs to be done now, not in May or later in 2025. And I believe I could be helpful in this context now. I mean, look, we're going to face an increasingly hostile federal government beginning very soon, and our state legislature is a bulwark against that. And there are a number of really important bills that are being teed up this session, focused on housing, focused on public safety, and combating firearm violence and protecting the environment. And the 34th needs a strong and loyal and effective representative in Olympia now, not next session. And, I would say this, because of my work on behalf of consumers and the public, I'm proud to say that I have the endorsement of one of your fellow PCOs, Dave Horn. Hey, Dave, who also happens to be the former Chief Deputy Attorney General under Bob Ferguson. And because of my work in public safety and criminal legal reform, I'm proud to say that I have the endorsement of King County Prosecutor Lisa Mannion. If any of you want to talk further about why I'm seeking this appointment now, how prepared I am to jump in now, and why I'd be a good fit for the 34th, please feel free to reach out. My email is accessible, and I will leave my phone number at the end. I hope to talk to each of you soon. Thanks.
Thank you. And I will keep this to under 90 seconds. Appointing a new representative now at the beginning of the term is essential to the legislative process and critical to the 34th representation. I'm committed to the process that you are using and to the role that PCOs and the county council have in selecting this position. I trust this body to choose an appointee based on future electability, proven democratic values, and a commitment to represent the unique needs of this district. The cost in dollars and resources to elect new leadership are high, and we are at a time in our national history where the Democratic Party and values need to use every available resource to win critical at-risk races. If not selected, I will not divert party resources by running against the appointed representative. I want them to have the fewest possible hindrances or obstacles in staying in that seat. So with that appointment, this appointment followed by election is the only route I consider to be an option for this position at this time.
The reason that I'm looking for the appointment now, I think it's really important for us to maintain continuity of service and address the challenges in our community. We can't afford to lose momentum on critical issues in this pivotal time with the new administration and everything that's already been going on despite that. I've already spent extensive time engaging with different legislators in the House and the Senate, as well as electeds, as well as just community leaders across the state. And I've even built a network across the nation of elected officials to try to coordinate, collaborate, and figure out what can be done, how can it be done, because one person doesn't have the answer. And obviously, if you do not have the majority, then all the great ideas aren't going to go very far. I think it's important to continue to build these relationships and not have a lapse in that. I don't see this as a shortcut, but as my responsibility as a community leader to step up.
Well, this question is easy for me to answer. I just moved back to the district. My partner and I recently purchased a house in Delridge, and we moved in 3 months ago. Shout out to Rachel Glass, who knocked on my door during the election season. I think we talked for about 30 minutes the first time we met because we're both passionate about politics. She also told me about the 34th LD Dems, and I've already donated and become a member. On top of that, I'm motivated to make some changes to our state pretty much immediately. And here's some of the problems I'm eager to tackle. More housing, more housing, more housing. Major tax reform, more inpatient psychiatric facilities, protecting the unhoused and having more emergency shelters, offering computer science class in all public high schools, increasing taxes on vaping and alcohol, and the list goes on and on. Having recently moved back to the district and seeing this opportunity in the West Seattle blog, I knew I had to run for the vacant seat. I'm qualified, I have ideas, I care deeply about this district, and we need changes as soon as possible.
On a Friday night in 2018, I was making dinner with some friends, and one of those friends had been struggling with substance use disorder, and he went missing. So we went to find him, and we found him in the middle of an overdose. And so I started CPR while his fiance went and got Narcan, and it didn't work, and he died. And from that moment, I realized that everyone should have access to the health care that they need, whether it's a mental health care, whether it is inpatient treatment, you know, we can't continue to wait for someone else to bring us solutions in this space. This year, I was able to lead a team that reprioritized Seattle's public health dollars and investments and move them around from things that we had been doing that were a bit of a harbinger of the past and infuse those resources in the crisis that we are facing today across our communities, across this county. I currently also serve as a board member of DESC, where we have to balance a budget and work with multiple levels of government to serve people that are suffering right now in this moment in our communities. I'm also working on building the overdose recovery center that will serve all of King County in partnership with King County and the crisis care levy that the 34th, again, overwhelmingly passed. I am running right now for this position because I share your values. And I will stop talking.
Thanks for the question. I'm proud to have been elected to represent the 34th district in the state legislature twice, both in contested elections and one just in this last November where I received over 85% of the vote. So I believe that I have both campaigned and earned the confidence and credibility in this district. And in the next week, we're going to head into one of the most challenging legislative sessions that we've had in a long time, where we have a $10 billion budget deficit. And we're going to need a senator who is comfortable making tough decisions on how to protect our social safety net and protect critical investments, and who's comfortable to vote for the progressive revenue and the resources that we need to invest in our communities. We have a federal administration that's intent on rolling back many of the policies that we hold dear and that are close to our values. And we need someone who's prepared to stand up and push back against that. We'll have a new governor and a changing landscape in Olympia. And we need someone who knows how to navigate Olympia to get things done for our district. I'm uniquely qualified and positioned to jump in. I'm not taking shortcuts. I have run for and will continue to run to represent this district. And I think I can add service at a challenging time in Olympia this session in the Senate.
The question asks why it's important to me, but really it's not about me. It's important to the residents of the 34th District and the state of Washington that this vacancy is filled quickly and responsibly with a highly qualified candidate. I am seeking this appointment now because it is more important than ever to stand by Washington's progressive values. This past election, all eyes were on Washington's Climate Commitment Act to see whether or not we had a mandate from voters to continue to advance the most progressive climate policies in the country. The voice of the people was clear. We need strong policies to protect our air and water and to protect our overburdened communities that bear the brunt of rising temperatures and industrial pollution. And we need strong advocates to lead the way. I have years of experience advancing complex environmental policy at the state level, and I'm ready to do it as a state representative. I've spent countless hours with other legislators hammering out the perfect language for a bill that will get it across the finish line. I've worked with tribes and community members to incorporate their priorities and ensure that unintended consequences are avoided. It's important to fill this vacancy with a leader who can start advocating for the 34th District on day one, and I will be that leader.
Washington's public schools are facing an unprecedented financial crisis now, one that threatens the education of over 1 million students across the state, and the decisions made in this legislative session will have an impact on our students for generations to come. Over the past year, I've talked with school board directors from across the state, urban, suburban, rural, all grappling with massive budget shortfalls, figuring out what essential programs to cut and what dedicated teachers or staff need to be laid off. Without action, we risk failing our students and falling short of our constitutional duty to provide every child with a fully funded education. But it's not just about education. This legislative session, our state faces a significant budget deficit. We have an opportunity to finally do something about our upside-down tax system. This is a moment to work toward creating a fairer tax system where everyone pays their fair share so we can invest in education, critical services, and infrastructure. People often talk about moments when a door is open, a chance to act, and this legislative session is one of those moments for education and tax reform. and it's a moment that I'm ready to meet.
Thank you. Moving on to question 3, our first respondent will be Sarah Moore. What are your priorities? What do you believe can be accomplished in these areas this year? And how do you plan to manage the complication of a delayed start to your work?
Am I unmuted? I did not
Yes,
get
you're
a.
unmuted.
Okay, thank you. My priorities will reflect my experience in city government, the needs I've seen, and the impact the state can have on local jurisdictions. My overarching priority will be a more progressive revenue structure and a reduction of tax burden on economically under-resourced people and communities. We've been pushing on this, and we have to keep pushing until it happens. Healthcare has been a struggle, but I believe there will be stronger than ever public pressure that may move this forward. I will talk more about healthcare later. Rent stabilization will be heavily opposed. It always is, but I believe that the numbers will speak louder than um, anything else on the need to keep people in stable housing. Protecting the immigrant communities in Washington state who will likely be targeted by increased aggressive deportation policies. I believe that Washington will and must be a leader in this area. Expanding access to affordable quality childcare in Washington. Lack of childcare holds back workers of all kinds and keep them from achieving their full potential. Reduce climate polluting emissions and ensure equity for lower income communities and communities of color to share in the economic opportunities presented by solutions to climate change. With the failure of I-2117, I believe that this work can carry forward.
Yes, my priorities are housing insecurity and rent stabilization. And that doesn't just look like supportive housing, because as great as it is to have these supportive housing opportunities, building more of them is great. But the fact that we need them in the first place, because a huge percentage of our population can't afford to pay rent or buy a house despite working, is an issue. I'm also a huge mental health advocate as a social worker. Excuse me. I think it's incredibly important that we have accessible mental health services as well as co-responders. We definitely need law enforcement, but to have people criminalized for things that they really just need support and assistance, where we can have some restorative justice and prevent these cycles from prevailing, is incredibly important. Obviously, we need to fully fund education. It's the state's paramount duty to do so. Very aware that we have these projected huge shortfalls in the budget. We still need to fully fund education because this is our future, this next generation. And as well as childcare. As a parent myself, my kids are teenagers now. It's incredibly difficult to have children and be able to work. A lot of people that I know that have babies now, they're literally working as well as their spouse just to use one of their incomes on childcare to catch up with being in the session already started. I've already been having extensive conversations with people I know in the Senate and legislature to make sure that I have a support system if and when I'm honored to be there.
My top priorities are addressing housing, climate change, and tax reform. To be specific with tax reform, for example, I want to see a state income tax and a land value tax. Washington State is one of the most progressive states in the entire country, and yet we have one of the most regressive tax systems. That needs to change. I recognize that these tax reform ideas are significant and would require time. That doesn't mean things can't be accomplished in my first year. I would begin collaborating with experts and other policymakers to prepare drafting legislation. Simultaneously, I would focus on educating the public on why these changes are important. That starts with town halls, public service announcements, and meeting with local leaders. Faster wins include endorsing the bills and levies already supported by the 34th District Democrats. I've been reading the minutes of previous meetings, and I support the BEC 6 levy and the educational programs and operations levy to help our schools. I will also support raising the minimum wage in Burien. To manage my delayed start, I would take a sabbatical from work. I would tap into my network and meet with as many people as I can before heading to Olympia. I want to be as knowledgeable as the person leading orientation when I first step into the state capitol. Fortunately, I'm someone who loves to read and meet with people, so I'm eager to get started.
Some of my major priorities are the same as my fellow candidates. We all care about housing, but the way we build housing also matters. Public funded projects also need to come with community workforce agreements so the folks building the housing that we need don't qualify to actually live in it. And we did that last year in the housing levy. Again, you'll hear me speak about behavioral health and inpatient treatment access to beds across the state. That remains one of our number one priorities for public safety and community safety. The ferry system, I did call time this week and talked to Vashon, and you guys definitely got me hip to the situation on our marine highways. So making sure we're working with our transportation committees to have a fare system that is reliable and is that is reliable and predictable for people to move back and forth in the 34th. The minimum wage in Burien, I think, is going to be a project that will be successful on the ballot this year. And I'm proud to say that I was the person who helped bring you the first $15 minimum wage in SeaTac back in 2013 and defended wages here in the city of Seattle and unincorporated King County. As to the delay of starting, all of us will be playing catch up. Everyone here is a busy person, but we're all used to being busy people. We're all used to working in teams. We're all used to asking for help when we need it. I'm sure I'm going to need a lot of help catching up, and that's where you all come in. Thank you.
Thank you. My priorities, I believe, are our priorities. Make housing more affordable, make healthcare and childcare more accessible, and fully fund our public schools. On housing, we need more housing. We need to cut costs for families and seniors. We need to prevent homelessness, and we need to push back against federal policies that are going to harm us here. I'll push legislation that'll stabilize rents and cap excessive rent increases, stop institutional investors from buying up single-family homes, and help create more housing in all communities. On childcare, and we'll need to continue to make progress on the basis that we've made with Fair Start for Kids. I have legislation to fix our broken subsidy system so that childcare operators can stay in business, and so it's easier for families to find the care that they need. On healthcare access, we've made some progress and there's much more work to do. I have legislation that would help people who are injured on the job get access to the care that they deserve and help people get better contraceptive coverage. What their doctor is ordering, they should be able to get at the pharmacy. On public schools, our schools need far more resources to meet the needs of diverse kids. And we know, I believe, that the cap on special education funding is totally unconscionable. I'll work with my colleagues to lift that cap and to get the progressive revenue that we need to invest in our public schools.
My top priorities will be innovative environmental policy, safeguards for our most vulnerable populations, including immigrants and trans folks, addressing the housing crisis, and ensuring that our budget shortfall is addressed responsibly without undermining critical social and environmental justice programs. Under a new Trump administration, I want the Washington legislature to show our residents that we are doing everything that we can to keep them safe and healthy. As a junior representative starting out late, I know that my role this year would not be to upend the party's agenda with bold new proposals that I'm championing by myself. I know that my role would be to work with other legislators and stakeholders and tribes and build coalition to get common sense bills across the finish line. Some of these have already been filed, like pre-filed, like 5104, which would protect employees from coercion in the workplace based on immigration status, or 1075, which would expand affordable housing supply, or 1031, which seeks to mitigate the impact of rising temperatures in our schools due to climate change. Or in some instances, it could mean standing firmly against discriminatory Trump rhetoric from seeping into our state by making sure that some bills never make it out of committee, like 5136, which seeks to outlaw using students' preferred names or programs in public schools. Having worked alongside the legislature for almost 4 years, I wouldn't be playing catch up. I would dive in headfirst to advance the progressive Democratic agenda.
So in the answer to my last question, I talked a lot about struggling schools and education funding. And education and education funding is a top priority and an area where I bring a lot of expertise. But it's not the only challenge we're facing. Over the past 2 weeks, I've had the opportunity to speak with many precinct committee officers and representatives of their community and their neighborhoods. And the theme that has run through most of these conversations is this idea around affordability. People are concerned, and rightfully so, about the rising costs of housing, healthcare, education, childcare. My priority in the legislature would be, how do we ensure that everyone has the opportunity to live, work, and contribute to this community? And in order to do that, we need to address the skyrocketing costs of housing and healthcare. We have to expand access to affordable, quality childcare. It's an imperative that the resources from the Climate Commitment Act are directed at frontline communities that need them most. And we have to invest in better transportation infrastructure, including reliable service for those Vashon ferries. These are the critical issues that would be my priorities in the legislature because they impact the lives of the people of our district and the state every single day. For over a decade, I've worked in local government, Seattle School Board, chair of the 34th, and through this service, I'm proud of the strong relationships that I've built that I will use so I can hit the ground running in the legislature. Thank you.
Well, this is going to sound familiar. Priorities include affordable housing, homelessness, and public safety. You all no doubt saw the recent congressional report that placed Washington at #2 in the nation in terms of homelessness. Huge rises in homelessness, disproportionately affecting communities of color, huge rises in family homelessness with children on the streets. The issue cannot be separated either from the issue of affordable housing. And I've watched and agreed with Representative Alvarado on a lot of these issues. You know, the end of pandemic era protections resulted in skyrocketing rents that place housing out of the reach for a lot of people. And I'm certainly happy to see proposed amendments to the King County Comprehensive Plan that would allow more ADUs, more backyard cottages, loosened density restrictions. Those will help. When it comes to homelessness, they're not going to be sufficient. We also need to be building transitional housing, and we need to recommit to programs like job training. As to how I'm going to jump in so quickly, I like a good challenge. I have the capacity and the experience to jump in right away. And because of my legislative experience, I would need less time than some to get up to speed. So I'm ready to do it. Let's go. Thanks.
Thank you. Moving on to question 4. First respondent will be Stephanie Tidholm. What committee appointments do you plan to pursue if appointed, and why?
Yes, if appointed, I'd be interested in the Capital Budget Committee. It's really similar to the Capital Projects Committee that I've been serving on Highland School Board for the last year and some months almost, as well as the Housing Committee. I was really supportive and worked with Emily Alvarado last year on 2114. It's incredibly important. It's personal to me, not only because I do work in the community as a social worker, supporting the people that are unhoused, but I'm also a paycheck or two away from being unhoused myself. The human services, youth, and early learning, because again, I do work in social services. I do a lot of work with the youth as well, sitting on different committees, going to speak, a lot of work trying to get the babies engaged. We need the younger generation engaged in politics, early learning, because education is paramount, as well as community safety, justice, and reentry, because I have worked for years on a law enforcement assisted diversion program, and it's incredibly important that we have accountability when people break the law. Yes. However, without restorative justice, it's just punitive, and we continue these cycles, and nobody wins if people are just penalized to get back out onto the streets and continue these same things. So those would be the main committees that I would be interested in.
Two committees stick out to me. Number one, the House Consumer Protection and Business Committee. Why? Because I believe in data privacy, especially when it comes to sensitive data. We live in a world now that sometimes feels almost completely digital. And as a software engineer and engineer manager, I understand the gaps in our system. For starters, we need to require all companies that handle sensitive data to be SOC 2 compliant. Currently, this is not legally mandated, but it is becoming the gold standard in vendor contracts in the tech community. By embracing and improving our data privacy regulation, we can help citizens feel safer, prevent national security threats, and set a precedent for other states. Number two, the House Transportation Committee. For starters, I love public transit. My partner and I take the bus to work every single day. And as our cities grow, we need to support public transit because it provides affordable, sustainable, and efficient access while reducing traffic, pollution, and social inequities. Ultimately, I would love to see public transit for free for all across the entire state. Cities like Olympia have already made that switch, and outside of Washington, bigger cities like Kansas City and Boston are experimenting with the concept. Because we already have a major budget deficit, I would propose a tax credit to encourage more people to take public transportation. As an example, every day someone uses their Orca card in King County, they could receive a $1 tax deduction for that day. That means by the end of the year, frequent commuters could get a $200 to $300 tax deduction. This creative program incentivizes people to take public transportation and could help with sound transit budget deficit.
This is not going to surprise you all, but I would like to serve on the housing committee. Yes, housing. Please, I also think I'd be fully prepared with my relationships with the housing committee to follow up on the great work that Representative, soon to be Senator Alvarado, has laid for us to follow in her footsteps. The Labor and Workforce Committee, I love workers, y'all. I really, if you don't have a union, let me get you one. And if you don't, if you can't get you one, let's make sure the protections on the books, the law of the land, creates a respectful workplace where livable wages are paid to everyone who goes to work every day. The Community Safety Committee is of great interest to me. I've been able to work very closely recently with the Seattle Municipal Courts and the courts over at King County to create systems that are more racially equitable and do not penalize people for already being in a difficult situation. Electronic home monitoring, for instance, is something we've expanded in the city to reduce the amount of time that people have to spend in jail for minor offenses. Now, I do believe in public safety and I do believe in the rule of law, but I do not believe that incarceration should lead to homelessness. The housing crisis that we have is based on upstream challenges of making sure that people have livable wages, have access to health care, and that having one bad day doesn't derail the course of an entire life and have a multi-generational impact. If they let me at it, I'd also like to join the local government committee because I like municipal government. The more you talk to me, the more you know I'm a nerd's nerd.
Well, thank you. Currently in the House, I serve on the Housing Committee on Local Government, and I'm proud that I was selected to be Vice Chair of the Capital Budget Committee. And I think in all of those areas, that's where I served last session as well, that I've earned respect and I've demonstrated that I can contribute. So I'd be eager to continue that kind of service in the Senate, bringing my housing expertise to bear on the Housing Committee to try to tackle one of our largest state's challenges, and also to look at how we can influence the budget. This is the year of the budget, and I believe that I've developed skills on the capital budget to help secure the resources for our district and to have a vision of how we spend according to democratic values, investing in housing and behavioral health care services and clean air and water. So I hope to continue that service outside of committees. I think there's a lot of room for leadership. I'm proud to be vice chair of the Members of Color Caucus and to serve on our first Latino Democratic Caucus. And I hope to continue that kind of leadership, bringing people together in the Senate.
So I don't think it'll surprise folks to say that I would be a natural fit for the House Agriculture and Natural Resources Committee. I've worked in natural resources policy for a decade, and I have deep knowledge of our state's existing natural resources policies and ongoing challenges. I've worked with Representative Reeves, the new chair of that committee, both during her time as legislative director at the Department of Natural Resources, but also as the agency lead on several bills that she sponsored since her reelection. Similarly, I'd be able to contribute my extensive expertise to the House Environment and Energy Committee. But beyond that, having also worked on creative housing policy to better use public lands to add critical housing supply, I would be excited to bring new perspective to the Housing Committee to address one of the most urgent issues of our state. Finally, I care deeply about equal rights under the law for vulnerable populations, particularly immigrant communities and LGBTQ plus individuals who are currently being unjustly targeted at the national level. I would be honored to serve on the House Civil Rights and Judiciary Committee as well to ensure that their rights and well-being are being protected.
If appointed, I'd like to serve on the Transportation Committee, the Education Committee, and the Local Government Committee. All of these align closely with priorities of our legislative district and where I could bring expertise and value. Given the unique geographical features of our district and islands and bridges, reliance on public transportation, I would like to serve on the Transportation Committee to champion reliable ferry service, bridge repairs, strong and safe public transit, roadway improvements that mitigate noise, air, water pollution, and disproportionate impacts to low-income communities. An obvious committee that I want to serve on is the Education Committee. My experience as president of the school board has given me a deep understanding of the challenges our schools face, and this perspective will strengthen the connection between the policies shaped in Olympia and the real needs of our students and teachers on the ground. And I'd make a stronger legislator and school board director because of this. Lastly, I'd like to serve on the local government committee. I've spent a decade working for King County Executive Dow Constantine and understand the critical needs and the critical work that local governments do. Thank you.
Right. I'd say three things: community safety, consumer protection, and environment and energy. As I mentioned, I have extensive experience working in the legal system and alongside law enforcement. So that means I've responded to crime scenes. I've looked in the eyes of victims and I've witnessed how they experience the justice system. It also means that I've seen where the criminal system can do better and where it doesn't recognize people's humanity, or where there's a lack of trust in the system, or where it moves too slowly. When it comes to consumer protection, that's what I do. I'm a consumer protection lawyer by day. I've successfully investigated and sued firearm dealers for violating our laws, all sorts of companies who deceive and hurt the public in pursuit of a buck. And we need to maintain a level and fair playing field for legitimate businesses to thrive. And when it comes to the environment, I cannot overstate how much I love this region. Every time that I've been away for any significant period of time, I have missed it dearly. Our local ecosystems are fragile and they need us to protect them. And I would love to play a part in that. Thanks.
The Environment and Energy Committee is the one that just stood out to me as well aligned to me and fitting with my current involvement on City Council. I serve on the King County Cities Climate Collaboration, the K4C, on the Ryan 9 Watershed Group and the Regional Water Quality Committee, and my role as Berrien City Council member. I also led Berrien in adopting a stance against Initiative 2117. We were one of the first cities to do so. Responsible use of energy, reduction of greenhouse emissions, environmental justice, and the stewardship of our land, waterways, and shoreline are my passions. And home decarbonization and heat pumps are an affordable, highly local way to reduce emissions, save money for residents, and take a single action that reduces greenhouse gases and makes homes safer. That leads to my second priority, Housing Committee. I'm interested in all aspects of housing affordability, renter protection, securing step housing suitable for the many complex needs of the unhoused community. The investment in housing is an investment in stable workforce, healthy community, and the only long-range solution to homelessness. I also am very interested in the House Local Government Committee. While my experience on a city council is still fresh in my mind, I want to bring the experience I gained there to this committee. I believe that local government makes a difference to individuals' lives. I've seen that with my own eyes. I will bring that point of view with me and look for ways to strengthen the workflow between states and local jurisdictions.
Thank you. On to the next question. First respondent will be Jeffrey Wukelik. Is there a particular piece of legislation in which you are interested? If so, explain what that bill is about and why you believe it's important.
Yeah, this question was fun for me. I enjoyed reading about dozens of different bills, but before I share my favorite piece of legislation, I want to highlight a few others that caught my attention. House Bill 1123, ensuring access to primary care, behavioral health, and affordable hospital services. House Bill 1116, making Election Day a recognized holiday. House Bill 1071, implementing strategies to achieve higher recycling rates. But the bill that I'm most interested in is House Bill 1058, providing incentives to improve freight railroad infrastructure. Why? Because infrastructure is important. Anyone who lives in our district can tell you that. The closure of the West Seattle Bridge was devastating, and now we're dealing with our broken ferry system, making it difficult to reach places like Vashon. Investing in infrastructure is the right thing to do. Before my current job, I worked for a startup for several years that focused on the supply chain and freight brokering. This job took place during the pandemic, which highlighted further how important our supply chain is. Freight railroad infrastructure is an essential link in our supply chain, and we need to make sure Washington stays connected to the rest of the country and the world. Lastly, this bill not only fosters economic development and increases infrastructure resiliency, it also helps our state meet our carbon reduction goals. Therefore, this is a win-win type of bill, and I want to make sure it gets passed. Thanks.
The two things that come to mind that are most important to me going in the gate is unemployment insurance protection for striking workers. We know that multi-million dollar corporations can afford to wait out a strike. Working families cannot afford to wait it out. And I don't think that the arguments I've heard that this creates an impetus for workers to strike or limits the safety net or giving people a reason to get back to work. Workers don't want to go on strike. Most people who go on strike are doing so because their rights have been neglected, their wages have been stagnated, and their insurance isn't covering and meeting the needs of their families. So that's the first thing I'm ready to get to work on. Also, the implementation of Working Connections funding for families for childcare subsidies. The proposal in Governor Inslee's budget right now delays that till 2030, as you heard earlier, and you've heard from many of my fellow candidates. Affordable childcare is the cornerstone of a healthy economy, and the suppressed wages of the people providing that childcare right now are simply not to be borne. In the housing levy last year, we were able to put money in for workforce stabilizations for permanent supportive housing because we know turnover of those workers creates incongruency of service for the people living in permanent supportive housing. Turnover in childcare creates instability for children. And so what we need to do is find a way. I know $296 million is a lot of dollars, but we've got to tackle that right away.
Thank you. So on policy, I think we have to cut costs for working families. And the single greatest cost in a household budget is housing. I have legislation that would cap excessive rent increases, bringing stability and predictability to millions of people across the state of Washington. Here in the 34th district, 40% of the district of our constituents are renters. Statewide, 40% are renters or manufactured homeowners. They deserve some predictability so that they can stay in their homes and in their communities and contribute to our lives. Two, beyond policy, we gotta pass a budget that reflects our values. We know we're facing this significant deficit, but I believe in part we're facing the deficit because we have a tax system that relies on consumption by working people in order to get the revenue that we need. That's not okay. We have to be willing to pass legislation both that acts short-term and long-term to move us more towards a progressive revenue system so that we can have the resources to invest in critical things in our community. I'm interested in not just investing in the big things, but responding to the needs locally. I've advocated for water taxi service in our ferries. I'll continue to do the kind of advocacy that gets resources into the problems that we have in this district.
One bill that I'm particularly interested in is House Bill 2243, the Child Care Equity Land Trust. This bill, sponsored by Representative Reeves last session and being brought back this session, demonstrates that it's possible to solve multiple problems at once. The bill proposes that the state acquire new forest lands that might otherwise be converted to parking lots or developments and sustainably manage them in trust in order to generate revenue for critical childcare services. In some ways, this isn't new. Each year, lands managed in trust by the state generate more than $300 million to support K-12 schools and other services such as libraries. But for too long, the need for affordable childcare and fair wages for the predominantly Black and Brown women that act as caretakers has been ignored. Our state can and should play a bigger role in reducing childcare costs for working families and ensure that we are caring for the caretakers by providing them living wages. This bill proposes that we protect our forests, manage them under the principles of climate smart forestry, and provide a permanent funding solution to critical programs like the Child Care Deserts program. It's policies like these that think outside of the box to tackle our most urgent needs that I'm interested in championing.
There are several pieces of legislation I'm interested in, and most of it aligns with this core priority of mine in the legislature, ensuring that everyone has the opportunity to live, work, and contribute to our community. And first, I'll talk a little bit about affordable housing. Representative Alvarado has done such incredible work in this space, including legislation that she mentioned to prevent predatory rent increases. I want to build on that work that she has done. Also, there's some transit-oriented development is another area I'm particularly excited about. Representative Reed's House Bill 2160 from last session, which focused on increasing housing near transit hubs. This kind of legislation not only expands affordable housing, but helps reduce urban sprawl and supports environmental goals. Healthcare is another priority. I've had some great conversations the past week with PCOs, community experts, community members and experts about protecting quality healthcare. And I would be excited to work on legislation like Keep Our Care Act to ensure hospital mergers and consolidations don't harm patients or restrict access to critical services like reproductive health and end-of-life care. Thank you.
Man, there are so many issues teed up right now of interest, environmental, budget, election-related ones. But I want to talk about two bills or two issues. One is that you have seen and will continue to see bills to hold the firearm industry accountable. In recent years, I have served as the president of the Foundation Board of Directors for the Alliance for Gun Responsibility, the state's preeminent gun violence prevention organization. And we've been successful in shepherding through legislation on strengthening background checks, banning large capacity magazines and assault weapons, promoting safe storage, and promoting accountability for the firearm industry for the harm caused when they illegally flood communities with guns. Coming up, I know you're going to see bills this session that would limit the number of guns that can be purchased in any period of time, to strengthen background checks and licensing, and to tighten rules for the sales and marketing of firearms. But two, I wanted to talk about, as somebody with a personal stake in this, with a lot of my neighbors and community members also sharing a personal stake, we need to ensure a robust and dependable ferry system. Islanders like to say, we do not want a bridge. We just want dependable ferries. And we have been assured over and over that this is in the works, but I want to hold people's feet to the fire and make sure it actually happens. Thanks.
Thank you for the chance to take a deeper dive on one of the priorities we discussed earlier. I'm going to focus on the Keep Our Care Act. It is supported by the ACLU of Washington. Healthcare is one of the topics that first deeply involved me through ACLU People Power and through Whole Washington. Keep Our Care would protect healthcare recipients from being priced out of coverage by mergers and acquisitions among healthcare facilities. In parts of the state, hospital care is a functional monopoly with only one hospital within reasonable distance. In some cases, this restricts access to certain types of reproductive health care due to hospital policies. And in many cases, it raises costs to the consumer because there are not alternative healthcare options. A person's reproductive needs, gender identity, zip code, or income should not determine their access to life-giving healthcare. No one should be saddled with medical debt that's one of the key contributors to loss of housing, fueling the already disastrous housing crisis in our state. Almost everyone I know has a healthcare story to tell that is not about their health, but about how their treatment and billing exacerbated the experience of health crises. The cumulative loss to our state from these stories is entirely preventable. And I would advocate for the Keep Our Care Act to help with that prevention.
Excuse me. Yes, one piece of legislation that I've been passionate about and would continue to be is the House Bill 2114, sponsored by Representative Alvarado. As I said, I did a lot last year to help advocate and have been this year as well, having conversations, going to Olympia a number of times, testifying to the bill, coordinating with different organizations. It's important to me because, as I've mentioned a number of times, I'm a social worker. I work with the unhoused. I know how incredibly difficult it is, sometimes near impossible, to not only find housing, but also maintain housing. I've been personally affected a number of times by having my rent increased. Some years ago, my rent was increased by $900. Just recently, my rent was increased by $400. And recognizing that there's so many people that are just so incredibly upset and disgusted by the population of homeless and how it's substantially increased. But nobody asked the question why. They just assume that these people are addicted to drugs and don't want to live in housing. But I myself can barely afford to live because landlords at this point can do essentially whatever they want, which is a little bit of notice. And it's not fair, it's not reasonable, it's not realistic, and something has got to give because the shrinking middle class is going to be extinct if we don't do something about it soon.
Thank you. Moving on to question 6, our first respondent will be Brianna Thomas. What role do you see the state legislature playing in creating solutions for the most pressing issues so that Washington continues to move forward and lead the nation on many fronts?
Really appreciate this question because I'm coming to you from Louisiana right now. And I can tell you, Louisiana does not have a livable wage. Louisiana does not have the environmental protections that the state of Washington does. And don't get me started on these potholes and infrastructure. The state government is where the rubber really hits the road. It's the tie that binds for all Washingtonians. And I think that this opportunity and this appointment in a budget year, facing a budget deficit, also gives us the opportunity to build a non-austerity budget to fill that hole. Now, obviously, we need progressive revenue to do so, but I think it's time. We're going to have a majority in the House and the Senate. I think it's time to be bold. I think it's time to lead. I think it's time not to worry about whether or not it's an election year and whether or not taking risk jeopardizes your ability to access power. I appreciate the fact that Washington State has led on so many policies. Again, like I said, sitting here in Louisiana right now, the difference is night and day. Thank you.
Thanks, Jordan. I think coming out of the November election, it seems clear to me that we have both an opportunity and really an obligation to show what good democratic leadership looks like and what it can do for the people of the state. And on that, I think we need to do two things. One, we need to take bold steps to make life better for people right now. And we have to protect and defend the values that we hold dear long-term, knowing that there is going to be an assault by the federal government on some of those values. I think we do well on protecting our values. Values like abortion access and reproductive freedom, or protecting against gun violence with common sense reforms, or protections for civil rights and LGBTQ people, or protections for our climate and action on climate justice. We'll continue to defend and move forward on those, but I think we have to be more bold as it comes to making life better for people now. And we have to build on the progress that we've made on wages and workplace protections. We have to build on the progress that we've made on healthcare and childcare access. We have to make housing available and abundant immediately for the people who live here and for the people who might want to move here because we're a desirable state to live.
So I could not agree more with Representative Alvarado. This past election, Washington State demonstrated that we will continue to fight for progressive causes at all levels of government and win. But our successes at the state level don't mean that we can rest easy. Now we need to be a model for other states by continuing to push the envelope by enacting progressive policies. We have such a clear message from the people of Washington that climate action is a shared value, that abortion and other healthcare are rights, not privileges, and that solutions for our housing crisis are an urgent need. But too often we see legislators make compromises on critical policy despite our strong Democratic majority in both the House and the Senate. The watered down bill that was passed on providing free school lunches in public schools is a classic example of this. We cannot shy away from using our Democratic majority to push for progressive policies that would be all but impossible in other parts of the country. And we need to demonstrate that when carefully implemented, these policies become popular beyond the core of the Democratic Party. We saw that with the resounding vote to keep the Climate Commitment Act. Each no on Initiative 2117 actually had national implications. It set a precedent across the country that strong climate policies aren't just a one-time fluke, but can become a bipartisan mandate. It's our responsibility to recognize the influence that we have as a state and be a guiding light for the rest of the country. And thanks.
This is a difficult question. With a hostile federal administration and national policy shifts, we have to work to protect our communities and show the country what is possible when we invest in our values. We have an opportunity to show the rest of the nation what happens when we invest in our students. We have an opportunity to show the rest of the nation what happens when we invest in housing. We have an opportunity to show the rest of the nation what happens when we invest in good jobs, affordable childcare, and education, K through 12 and higher education. And by doing this, we can show and invest in the people in our district and show the rest of the country the outcomes that we get by investing in our people. One area where I want to just flag that I think Washington lags behind most other states and needs to do some work is in our tax system. We have one of the most regressive tax systems in the country where, people making the least pay roughly 15% of their income in local and state taxes, and the wealthiest pay about 3%. This is unsustainable, wrong, upside down, and doesn't allow us to pay for the vital services and investments that we need to make. I think that this is a place that we lag behind and that we can catch up to the rest of the country. And finally, just the national threats to reproductive health and civil rights. Washington has to stand firm here in this moment.
Yeah, I could not agree with Gina more on the role of a state legislature. What's wonderful about state legislatures is that they're still the place where most policy issues are handled. Most issues that affect us are state and local issues. And the extent to which the federal government may be hostile to our interests, there are things we can do at the state and local level to insulate ourselves. And second, state legislatures are still very accessible and approachable. And I personally would intend to be a very accessible and approachable district representative. And so pressing issues can bubble up organically and be addressed relatively quickly. In terms of policy, I think Governor Inslee has taken very seriously our commitments to the environment. And I have no doubt Governor Ferguson will continue in that vein. We want to continue to see the orcas swimming by. We want to walk outside and take those morning breaths of fresh air. We want the visibility to see the mountain come out, even all the way from over here in the 34th. And protecting those things takes diligent work at the state level and careful oversight. And that's what's so great about this opportunity. Thanks.
Thank you. Several speakers have spoken eloquently about why we need Washington to be a leader and to keep the light of democratic values shining. I'm going to speak a little bit about how. Burien City Council recently passed an ordinance regarding STEP housing. That's emergency shelters, transitional housing, emergency housing, permanent supportive housing. Burien's had a tumultuous relationship with bringing these types of residences into the city, with council members and community members, in many cases, strongly resisting uses of space that allowed more people shelter and transitional care. But the state requires cities to permit STEP housing. And when our city planner introduced the legislation, it was adopted with minimal controversy. I learned while watching this happen about the need for certain types of legislation to take place uniformly statewide. Individual municipalities are afraid to be early adopters of policies that challenge existing conditions. In the case of STEP housing, they feared that if others did not follow, our city would be left stuck with all the responsibility for creating those types of dwellings. I see wider applications with such legislation to implement environmental and law enforcement policies, health and civil rights, immigration protection policies that, if adopted statewide, would have impacts well beyond the scope of any individual jurisdiction, and it would set a standard that the nation could look to in pushing back against conservative tides.
Yes, I can go on about all the different legislation and policies that we've discussed, which are all incredibly important and relevant. But I think ultimately the legislature has a role and the power and collaboration to address the issue. I think a lot of the issues are band-aids. I think a lot of legislation is putting band-aids on the bigger issue. And then you put the band-aid on and the wound is still festering. And then you take a pill for this issue that's happening, and then it just has another side effect, and it's this never ending cycle. I think ultimately the legislator has the power and the ability in collaboration to address the foundation, and I think that really is a paramount duty. And it's something that needs to be done. And that is my intention. I don't have all the answers as an individual. I would not have any power at all, but to go in collaboration and building relationships and listening to the community and observing what is going on and really getting to the foundation so we don't have to continue in these never ending cycles of band-aiding the wounds and just letting it fester underneath.
The state legislature has an incredible opportunity. While the rest of the country shifted right and voted for Trump, we went left. We need to set an example of what can be accomplished when Democrats are in charge. That means fixing the budget deficit. That means restricting guns and increasing public safety. And that means making our state more affordable to live in. A great place to start is with the land value tax, or LVT. I mentioned this topic earlier, but I want to emphasize it. For those unfamiliar, a land value tax is a tax levied on the value of a piece of land and ignores the value of any structure that sits on it. Some economists call this the perfect tax because it encourages efficient land use and discourages landowners from just leaving their land undeveloped. Too many properties in places like Seattle are just parking lots, empty fields, or abandoned buildings. Implementing an LVT will promote housing development, reduce inequality, and provide a stable source of revenue. I'm excited for the state legislature because the country needs a beacon of hope, and Democrats in Olympia can be that beacon. Thank you.
With that, we'll move into closing statements. And just as a reminder, this is the reverse order in which we did opening statements. So we will get started with Representative Emily Alvarado, and then we will move on to Brianna Thomas, then Jeffrey Wukelik, Stephanie Tidholm, Sarah Moore, Ben Carr, Gina Top, and then closing with Chenka Favrini Chorba.
Thank you, Jordan. And thanks to all of the 34th District PCOs for your service to our community and to democracy. I have to say, I love this district. From Pioneer Square to Burien, from Vashon and Maury Island to Georgetown and South Park, from White Center to West Seattle, this is a diverse and a dynamic district. And we deserve leaders who will fight for the change we want and who will protect the values that we hold dear. And I'll be that leader in the Senate. I'll have the courage to stand up to special interests. I'll speak up when it's not popular, and I'll always put outcomes over ego. I really believe, I'm an optimist, I believe we can build a better future where a person can retire with dignity, where one job's enough to pay the bills, where you can go to the doctor and get the health care that you need, whether it's an abortion or substance use treatment or end-of-life care, where you send your kids to school and you know they're going to get a great education, where our communities are safe, where our public services are reliable, where our infrastructure is durable, where we're protecting our environment and our democracy for generations to come. We can build that future. We can do it together. And I'd be honored to have your support to serve as your state senator in pursuit of that vision. Thank you.
Thank you all for joining us this morning and learning a lot about what our shared values are. Thank you to the 34th chair for all the work you did putting this together. I know it's been quite the week. Um, I really appreciate the opportunity to be a sincere servant leader. I don't think that being a representative is a seat that you just fill. I think it's an action. I think it's based in caring for your community. I think there's a ton of accountability that comes with it, and rightfully so. And I have been working in government or government adjacent for 15 years this January. I know what it means to craft policy that you can actually implement. I can write a beautiful bill, but if it's not a pathway to make it real, nothing happened. I understand what balancing budgets look like and how challenging that can be. We had to do four of them during COVID just to make sure that folks still had access to potable water and light, and we're still filling potholes, and people were safe in their homes. I am a proven leader that gets results. I love starting and finishing tasks. Ask anybody. I am a rigorous coworker. I am relentless in my values. I do not get bullied easily. And I promise that if you choose me to be your representative, all of those things will remain the same. I will stay here in West Seattle because I think once they let you in, you're not actually allowed to move anywhere else, and there's nowhere else that I would rather be. I have come to you two times before asking for your support as a candidate, and this is my third time, and I sure hope it's a charm. But all those other times that I lost, I just dusted myself off and got right back to work for this community. That doesn't give you an out not to pick me this time, but if you don't, I understand why, because there's so much talent in this group. But I am asking for a third time for an opportunity to serve and represent the 34th District.
Well, I want to start off by saying how grateful I am to be here. Thank you, Graham and Jordan, for facilitating this forum, and thank you to everyone who attended. I appreciated being able to share my story and my ideas, and I enjoyed listening to responses from the other candidates. At this point, I want to end with how I started. My name is Jeffrey Wukelik, and I am seeking your vote to fill the conditionally vacant House seat. I was born in the 34th District, and it would be an honor of a lifetime to represent its people. As mentioned earlier, I am someone who is here to stay. I will fight for this district, and I promise to make sure your voices are heard. People have elected me in the past to be the representative, and I hope that continues today. Additionally, as an engineer and engineering manager, I have experience tackling complex problems, delivering on key objectives, making tough decisions, and effectively communicating with all my stakeholders. If appointed, I will prioritize our cost of living crisis, our budget deficit, and our long-term well-being by advocating for significant housing developments, tax reform, support for education, data privacy laws, and affordable public transit. I also believe in climate change and resilient infrastructure. If you would like to learn more, please contact me. I will be reaching out to the PCOs, and I am available to talk in person, over the phone, or via email. Thank you for your consideration, and I look forward to meeting with you.
Yes. So living in White Center, which, as you know, is unincorporated King County, as is Vashon, I understand what it means to not have city representation and how important it is to have strong understanding and support of the community and representation of what's going on within these unincorporated areas. Now, I won't make any unrealistic promises to come in and upheave the system or even to make tangible change overnight because as much as I would love to do both realistically as an individual, I don't have that power even in Olympia. But what I will promise to do is to listen and observe, learn, and continue building relationships so that I can continue doing what I have been and advocating for and supporting my community. I spent most of my life making myself small for the comfort of others. I was told that my voice didn't matter and that my vote didn't matter, and I believed it, and therefore I was quiet and my voice couldn't matter, and I didn't vote, so obviously my vote didn't matter. So I just spent years quietly supporting my babies and advocating for and protecting them, as well as all my neighborhood babies and my community, until I came to the realization when I was asked to run for public office that my voice actually does matter, and it matters a lot. And that's what they were really scared of. And ever since I came to this realization, I have made it a point to show up and take up space unapologetically as often and as much as I can. to support my babies, my community, and have seen the change, not overnight, but in building the relationships and in listening and in leading with love. And I really look forward to the opportunity to potentially continue to do that in Olympia. And I appreciate all of your time on this beautiful Seattle groggy Sunday.
I want to thank the PCOs and the 34th, and I wish you wisdom as you select our next representatives. Regardless of your decision, we all need to keep on pushing for strong democratic values in Washington state. I will go on doing so whether at a state level, local, or whether elected, appointed, or as a private citizen. I'm very proud of what I've accomplished in my first term on Berrien City Council, raising my progressive voice to pass a comprehensive set of renter protections, a tree code, and working with fellow council members to minimize disruption from that code to landscape professionals, securing a $5 million grant for flood prevention and mitigation, standing for a minimum wage that was worker-centric in the face of a business-driven ordinance, bringing back a popular summer camp allowing families to have discounted childcare in their own communities, supporting public safety by renewing a popular co-responder model for police and social workers to respond in tandem on 911 calls, increasing multifamily tax exemptions citywide, allowing for more affordable housing construction, introducing the unanimous council vote to oppose initiative 2117 and chairing the Berrien Airport Committee, seen as a leader on airport topics in our region. I have a proven track record of running and winning, engaging with constituents, and I'm ready to hit the ground running on behalf of the 34th. I ask for your support to do so, and I support the decision that you will ultimately make. Thank you.
So the 34th should have a legislative champion who's able to deliver real results for this area. My daughter is growing up here, as I'm sure are your children and your friends and your loved ones. I want my daughter to grow old here and in safety and prosperity and health. And I want the same for each of your loved ones. And to make that happen, it just is a daily job. You get up every day, you work hard, and you dedicate yourself to the public. I've spent the last 18 years working for the public, speaking with community groups, trying my hardest to build up communities, to boost access to justice, to hold accountable the people who hurt us, and to make people feel heard. And we're at this moment where there's a lot of pressing challenges imminent. There are threats to healthcare and abortion access, there are threats to our air and water, to our education, to our ideals and even our democracy. And I plan to continue to work hard every day to protect those ideals. As somebody who's long dedicated himself to the community, I now want to serve this longtime district of mine more directly. And I hope you'll give me that opportunity. Thank you for your hours of listening to all of us talk here today. And I'm asking for your vote on January 19th. Thanks.
Thank you all for being here on a Sunday morning, engaging in this important process. As precinct committee officers, you hold a significant responsibility of making a really critical decision for our community about who should fill this role. Also want to thank Jordan for moderating, the 34th District Democrats for hosting this forum, and the other candidates for really the lively discussion. This process is fast and condensed, and it's been an incredible opportunity to hear directly from so many about the priorities for our next House member in our district. The main reason I'm running is that this district where my husband and I are raising our daughter is our home and one of the best places to raise a family, but it is becoming increasingly unaffordable and inaccessible. And I've never been one to sit back and hope for change, put my ideals into action, and I'm ready to do that now. We need a district where people can afford to live and work, where families can raise their children with access to high quality education, where individuals can retire with dignity and feel secure. We need a community that prioritizes affordable housing, good paying jobs, strong public schools, so that every resident, regardless of their background, has the opportunity to thrive. In short, we need a district where everyone, whether you're just starting out, raising a family, or enjoying retirement feels like they belong and have the resources they need to succeed. That's the vision I'm committed to bringing in Olympia. If you'd like to connect, I would love to continue this conversation or grab coffee. I will make sure that the 34th has my contact information so folks can reach out. Thank you all so much. I look forward to continuing the conversation.
Thank you all so much for the opportunity to speak with you today. For the past 4 years, I have worked alongside state legislators to pass bills that protect our lands and waters, offer creative solutions to our housing crisis, and improve how our government serves the people of Washington. I'm the only candidate today with a demonstrated track record of working across the proverbial aisle to successfully advance state policies that make Washington more equitable and more resilient to climate change. In 2023, the bill that I drafted to better enable the state to use our forests as natural climate solutions had support from more than 20 House Republicans, some of whom had even voted against the Climate Commitment Act. I know how to bring seemingly opposing sides together to find common ground. But perhaps more importantly, I also know when to stand my ground and fight for what's right. As a queer woman, I know what it feels like to have politicians use my basic human rights as bargaining chips in a compromise, winning some and sacrificing others. As a representative, I would refuse to compromise when it comes to the rights and well-being of our most vulnerable communities. With a second Trump presidency looming, we need leaders who will fight to Trump-proof our state, keep our communities safe. I'm confident in my ability to make progress against our state's toughest challenges and continue to demonstrate that equitable, progressive policies are popular and can make a meaningful difference in people's day-to-day lives. Finally, with the $10 billion shortfall facing our state, we need legislators with experience making tough choices while centering equity. I will be a legislator who will stand up to those who might use budget cuts as a way to undermine the critical environmental and social initiatives that uplift our communities. I know that programs that keep people housed and improve access to healthcare and social services actually save our state money, while cuts to those programs only cost us in the long term. I would be honored to serve the 34th District as House Representative, and I hope I have earned your support. Thank you.
With that, we have come to the end of our forum. Thank you again to all of our participants this morning. Seeing so many people eager to represent both our party and our district in Olympia is inspiring, and I hope that regardless of who's nominated and appointed, all of you will become members of our organization if you're not already, and help us continue to fight for meaningful progress. As we head into the rest of the process, please remember that we are all here for the same reason: to put into office passionate Democrats who will fight relentlessly for the values of our community. In our role as an organization shepherding this process through to the nomination meeting, our organization has worked diligently to make the opportunity to seek nomination as accessible and transparent as possible. And while we'll continue to communicate directly with our membership and community about the remaining steps of this process, King County Dems is responsible for coordinating the nomination of candidates. As we move forward, we are committed to maintaining a respectful and cooperative environment and ultimately getting passionate Democrats appointed to the Senate and House. Based on what I've heard today, I don't envy the county council's position. Nominating just 6 of you between these 2 positions will be difficult enough, so I can only imagine how difficult it will be to choose 2 to take on these roles. Thank you also to those of you who stuck around until the end. We peaked tonight at 76 attendees, and up until we finished closing statements, we had 71 still here almost 2 hours later. This many people dedicating their Sunday morning to something as niche and wonky as this is a reflection of our passion for putting the best people in office to get results that our district and state need from our state legislature. Just like our participants, I hope that everyone in attendance who have not already joined become members of the 34th District Democrats and get actively involved in the work that we do. You can do that by going to 34dems.org/contribute. And this Wednesday, we will be electing, confirming, and appointing new leaders for various roles that are absolutely essential to our organization's success. And there's a lot of fantastic ways for folks to get to become a part of that movement. So if you're not a precinct committee officer, consider becoming one. If you're passionate about a specific category of policy, check out our policy caucuses. If you're passionate about registering voters, getting out the vote, community outreach, making people feel welcome, fundraising, or even event planning, you can go to our website, read up on our standing committees, and once you become a member, check those boxes to tell us what you're interested in. 2025 is going to be a busy year for Democrats at every single level. And if we can rally together as a community, we will see amazing results in the 34th. Thank you all again for being here with us, and I hope to hear from and see you all again soon.